teach you part 2 of partial quotients division. Part 2 is different from part 1 in that divisors are double digits. Okay, so partial quotients division part 2 is very similar to part 1. The question I'm going to ask myself is how many times can 12 go into 246? Often in part 2 I may have to pull off to the side to do some figuring. Well, I know 12 times 1 is 12, so 12 times 10 is 120. I'm going to start there. So 12 times 10 is 120. I'm going to go ahead and subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. 4 minus 2 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, now I'm going to continue. Now I need to ask myself how many times 12 can go into 126. Well, if I go back to that first fact, I still can do 12 times 10 again. So I'm going to put in 12 times 10, which is 120. And subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. I can't put any more 12s into 6, so 6 becomes my remainder. Add up my factors over here. My answer becomes 20, remainder 6. Some folks might solve this problem a faster way and say they might know that 12 goes into 24 2 times. So what they might have done is they might have done 12 times 20, which is 240, which would have brought them to 246 minus 240 being 6, which would have ended the problem a lot faster. Okay. We'll come over to this problem, 512 divided by 35. This one's going to be a little more complicated because factors of 12 are a little bit easier, multiples of 12 are a little bit easier to know than multiples of 35. I know 35 and 35 makes 70. After that, I have to think a little bit more. So a good number to start with is, I'm going to say, can I multiply it by 10? 35 times 10 is 350. That's pretty close to 512. So I'm going to start there. 10 times 35 is 350. I'm going to go ahead and subtract. 2 minus 0 is 2. 1 minus 5 can't be done, so I need to borrow from the 5. Becomes a 4. The 1 becomes 11. 11 minus 5 is 6. 4 minus 3 is 1. Now I'm left with how many times 35 can go into 162? Well, I know 35 times 10 is 350, which is too high. So I'm going to pull to the side, and I'm just going to see what 35 times 5 is. I'm curious about how that can get me close. So using partial products, part 1, 30 times 5 is 150. 5 times 5 is 25. If I add them up, I get 175, which puts me over. Okay, but that was probably a good guess. So now I'm going to pull to the side again, and I'm going to see what 35 times 4 is. This is probably the most difficult part about part 2. So now I need to kind of do some of this figuring because the facts aren't as easily readily available. 30 times 4 is 120. 5 times 4 is 20. Adding them up, and I get 140. So that's going to be my closest I can go. So 35 times 4 is 140. I'm going to go ahead and subtract and erase my work from over here. You're going to need lots of space when working with part 2 just for all that extra math. 2 minus 0 is 2. 6 minus 4 is 2 also. Now I'm going to ask myself, can 35 go into 22? My answer is no. So my remainder, much larger than the remainders of part 1, is 22. I'm going to add up these factors over here and I get 14. The answer of 512 divided by 35 is 14, remainder 22. Again, this is partial quotients, part 2 division. Good luck.